A damning picture is coming into focus in the federal arson trial of Jonathan Rinderknecht in California. That picture, painted by prosecutors who say Rinderknecht purposely ignited last year's deadly Palisades Fire in Los Angeles that would eventually claim 12 lives and destroy thousands of homes. The trial against the 29-year-old began this week. Prosecutors have portrayed Rinderknecht as a lonely, vengeful man and alleged that he went on a New Year's Eve rant about capitalism, and Luigi Mangione, who is accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Prosecutors allege that after dropping off his last rideshare passenger, Rinderknecht hiked up a trail and then lit a fire just after midnight. Rinderknecht has pleaded not guilty. His defense team argues that there's no substantial evidence to link him to the blaze. They say it's the city's fault. The defense claims that Rinderknecht is a scapegoat for the Los Angeles Fire Department's failure to properly extinguish a fire that started earlier in that same spot, the Lockman Fire. And they say that buried embers from that Lockman Fire kicked up in the winds on New Year's Eve and sparked the Palisades Fire. News Nation has been at the forefront of investigating what the city knew and when. People have questioned whether Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and her administration handled everything appropriately. The mayor's own brother is part of a lawsuit against the city after his home burned in Malibu. So who should be held responsible for the destruction? An alleged loner? An allegedly negligent mayor? A city fire department? All of that will be for the jury to decide. To discuss the trial, Neama Rahmani, a former federal prosecutor, and Brian Claypool, a criminal defense attorney, join me now. Great to have both of you gentlemen with me. Neama, how hard is it going to be for prosecutors to prove that it was Rinderknecht who started this fire and that it wasn't embers from that fire a few weeks before?
Elizabeth, I think it's going to be pretty easy to show that Rinderknecht started that January 1st Lockman fire. I know the defense is arguing that it was fireworks or something else on New Year's Eve, but there's plenty of evidence that he was there, he was agitated, he wanted to wage this war against the rich, and he's the one who called 911, and they found the Bic lighter, he recorded the fire. I think the bigger challenge is, like you mentioned, establishing that causation. This is not your typical arson case. We're really focused on that January 7th fire that was the deadliest in California state history, and establishing that causation, those 6 days. I think that's going to be everything. We haven't gotten there yet, but expect to see a battle of the experts, ATF agents, fire chiefs that are going to show that it was that January 1st fire that was holdover and rekindled to January 7th.
Brian, you say it's going to be very difficult to prove Rinderknecht's actions led to the Palisades fire. Why?
Yeah, this case is dead on arrival, and in my opinion, it's a deflection. You know, I don't know if you knew, Elizabeth, I lived a mile or so from the Eaton fire, and we were evacuated for a week. So I lived and breathed everything leading up to the fires, the lack of warning everybody, the lack of deploying fire trucks at these fires. But look, at the end of the day, the prosecution can't just prove that Rinderknecht started the fire. They have to prove what's called legal causation. In California, Elizabeth, the primary test used is was it a substantial factor in bringing about the damage? If I'm repping Rinderknecht, I'm like, wait a minute. The fire should have been put out on January 1. Like Neama said, this guy called it in. The fire department had a chance to put it out. And in fact, they went back, Elizabeth, later in the morning on January 1. And one of the fire guys called up the battalion chief, and he says, look, we think it's still hot. We have hot rocks. We want to put it out. And the battalion says, no, come on back. So that is a catastrophic decision that's going to be used to defeat causation. And then, look, you have the issue of Karen Bass not deploying enough fire trucks. Do you realize that I think only 3 trucks were deployed in an area that scored 265? And if you're at a scale of 162 for a fire risk, that's already extreme. So Palisades was on the pipeline of having a fire hit them.
When you talk about LA Fire Department, I mean, there was a veteran with the LA Fire Department who said in sworn testimony back in February that he sounded the alarm that the first Lockman fire wasn't fully extinguished and that he was ignored by his own superiors. I mean, that feels like that would be almost a trial done, right?
Elizabeth, you should be a trial lawyer. Exactly. Why? because that's an intervening cause. And in California, an intervening cause defeats legal causation.
Right.
And you're exactly right. It's like he calls, he says, we got to put this out. And the chief tells him no. Then that is the cause, in my opinion, of the Palisades fire. That catastrophic, negligent decision.
Neama, in the meantime, you mentioned Rinderknecht himself called 911 16 times on January 1st as the fire spread. But, you know, he gave police one story when he was initially questioned, and then geolocation data from his cell phone showed that what he said wasn't true. He was actually standing 30 feet from the fire, much closer than he had told police. In addition, they found all sorts of weird, lurid drawings of, you know, people like dying in flames. It was this man. There was ample evidence. Seemed to be extremely emotionally disturbed.
No question. And, you know, he was caught in a series of lies, and he appears to be a pyromaniac of sorts, or certainly has a fascination with fire. If you look at his chat GPT history, so it's fascinating to see all that come in. But, you know, you and Brian also touched upon it. I mean, this is LA, and a lot of people have very strong views about what caused this fire, and whether it's the mayor, whether it's the fire department, whether it was Mother Nature. But the fascinating thing about this case, Elizabeth, is that to the extent that Rinderknecht is convicted and found guilty of arson, that actually hurts the civil cases against the city and the state. So if you're the thousands of homeowners that have filed civil lawsuits, you want that liability to be on the government entities. They're the deep pocket. But of course, this individual has no ability to pay any sort of civil judgment to the extent that he is found liable for this.
But Neama, don't some of those civil claims still hold? I mean, they're claiming that once the fire started, the city didn't respond appropriately. They didn't send enough fire engines. They didn't have enough water on standby in reservoirs. That doesn't matter, does it? Neama?
Well, we're talking about negligence, right? Mm-hmm. And when you have a criminal actor, what happens is the jury needs to apportion fault, right? So you have someone that's now probably going to be found guilty of arson and is going to be sentenced to prison. So when they're apportioning the fault, and it's anywhere from 0 to 100% between all of these different defendants, the jury may apportion a lot of the fault to Jonathan Rinderknecht. And guess what? He's not going to be able to pay like the city of
no, he's an Uber driver.
California can. Yeah. So it's a big deal.
Yeah. This verdict, this trial will be a very big deal. We'll be talking about it a lot. Neama Rahmani, Brian Claypool, thank you both so much. Really appreciate it.